Thank you for clicking on this video. I just got back from watching The Exorcist Believer, and for this legacy sequel of The Exorcist, we follow two different families who fall victim to their daughters being possessed. From here, they will do everything and anything to get their daughters back, including the help of a woman whose daughter went through a similar thing back in the 70s. And that's all pretty much say without giving any spoilers to you guys. This will be a spoiler-free review. I think I'm gonna have to talk spoilers once this movie is released, because there's a couple of things I want to get off my chest I'm not gonna be able to in this spoiler-free version. But when it comes to Exorcist Believer, I was kind of stunned whenever the announcement of this reboot/sequel was getting made. The news came out because Universal and Blumhouse teamed up and spent $400 million on the rights to make 3 movies of this franchise. That number was just kind of crazy to think about, but also the promise that they have a planned trilogy for this series. So planned, in fact, they already announced and confirmed the sequel, Exorcist Deceiver, August 18th, 2025. Easter. They know what they're doing with their marketing. And while yes, the original Exorcist is like a timeless horror iconic classic that everyone gushes over, I'm not going to deny its impact on the horror genre, but you can definitely mention that its sequels and prequels were nothing to scream about. I know there's lovers of Exorcist 3, but for the most part, those sequels are pretty forgettable, and we don't really talk about them as much as we do the original Exorcist. And on my own personal opinion, Exorcist demon possession type films are my least favorite of the entire horror genre. I find them to be kind of repetitive, boring, and I just never get invested in them. But I know maybe sometimes people feel that way with the slasher genre, and I'd say, I hope you get exorcised. By exercised, I mean a gym membership, because that's what I need. So finally, having sat down and watched the movie, let me tell you, they were this close to making me a believer. I think for the most part, there is going to be a lot of people who walk out satisfied and okay with The Exorcist Believer. And that'll be because the movie really isn't like utter garbage trash, but it's just okay and average at best. It was going to be a monumental, impossible task to make a direct sequel to one of the most iconic horror movies ever made, but you decided to do it. So I'm going to try not so hard to spend the entirety of the review being like, was way better here in the original than what they did here. So kicking into the things I actually did enjoy about this movie and why I thought I was going to end up making a positive, glowing review of this movie, the first 50% of it, like the first half of the film, is actually great. They do a lot of great character building and setting up this world, and specifically this family. The dad, Victor, played by Leslie Odom Jr., and Angela, played by Lydia Jewett. The movie takes its time to get you understand what their life has been up until this point, why they are so close to each other as father and daughter, and it's that bond and love between them that makes you feel so terrible once this girl starts getting possessed and going through the progression of that. And that in a weird way became the scariest part of the film for me, is just seeing this person that you love, care for, innocent, turned into such a horrific, nasty thing. Performances all around in this movie were very solid, especially Leslie Odom Jr. While I would have liked more shenanigans and antics between the possessed little girls, acting-wise, the girls do a great job. I also really even like the practical and visual effects they throw in there. So in that first hour, I'm sitting in the theater going like, I'm invested. I'm curious right now. I'm liking where this is headed, and they're even doing something unique with the 2 girls being possessed, the route they go about getting possessed. Like, I was genuinely glued to the screen wondering, how are they going to get out of this? What is their plan? What can you even do in a situation like this? And that's then when it started to become a forced legacy sequel, and it just goes downhill from there. Bringing me to the things I'm mixed and negative about here. So you've already seen in the trailers, they bring back the mom, Chris, played by Ellen Burstyn from the original Exorcist movie, and that probably meant a lot to Exorcist fans, that they would connect it in some way, and this Exorcist movie would follow the pattern that a lot of requels have in the past, reboot sequels. But when I tell you, they just completely wasted the usage of her character, that the moment she is entered and introduced on screen and how she'll fit into the plot, it just like quickly falls apart. And this is no fault to the actress. She does a good enough job on her own, but she definitely feels a little out of place and unnecessary to the story. I think it would have been better if you didn't connect this movie to the OG Exorcist. Not only would you not have that pressure from the original, but you were actually doing something fine all on your own. And I think there's going to be some diehard Exorcist fans that their jaws are going to be on the ground with like, that's what you brought her in for. She's also so insignificant to the plot of the overall movie, and just the connection to the original is so insignificant that it feels like you could literally rip it out of the film and nothing would really happen. I remember when they were coming out with Scream 5, or just Scream, and they didn't know if Neve Campbell, Sidney Prescott, would be involved in the movie, so they had written her a part, but in case she said no, that part could easily be written out so that not much would happen in their story. This feels like the exact same situation, like they had written her in there just in case she says no. It's an easy plot point to get rid of that won't affect the movie, and that becomes so noticeable in the movie. I said this whenever I saw the trailers, and it's even more apparent in the full movie. This movie just lacks atmosphere or just the immersion of the Exorcist world. If you watch that original, there's just some really creepy atmosphere built in with specific colors, lighting, fog, cinematography was on point. Here, that immersion isn't there. It's lacking that personality, and it makes it come off feeling a little soulless. Are there a good amount of creepy things that'll happen throughout the movie? Yeah, but a lot of them are also just jump scares, and I'm like, when you think about the scariest things about the original Exorcist, none come to mind. Oh, that jump scare. Now, the third act, I'm more mixed with because that's kind of when it started to win me over a little bit again. And that's mainly because of the way the Exorcists go down and the ideas they had for it. Because I think on paper, Exorcist Believer has a bunch of great ideas. You know, 2 girls getting possessed this time. The backstory involved with our main characters, this demon and what its ultimate goal is, and the way they go about the Exorcist. I was like, I love all of these ideas. The execution of them is being played out so rushed and unfleshed out. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but that's something I'll go into more in my spoiler review. I also feel like the end of the movie is going to be extremely polarizing. And while, yeah, I'm still like on the fence on whether I liked or disliked the ending, what I ultimately felt once this movie ended was like, it didn't feel like it had a reason to exist. And I just mean that because, again, this is a sequel to one of the most iconic horror movies ever. You decided to do that. You're going to have that pressure whether you like it or not. And this story and what happens just kind of feels so insignificant to what we were treated before. But again, it's not like a bad movie. It's just exists. It's okay. It's all right. If you're a big fan of David Gordon Green's style and his Halloween trilogy, which I do adore, like the first 2 movies, 3, even though I have my problems with it as a finale film, there's even things in Halloween Ends that I'm like, those are cool ideas. Here, it just felt fine. If anything, it felt like safe. A safe Exorcist movie, which is almost so bland, so boring. But I just say that because there'll be enough in here for a lot of people to get really into it. Because as far as demon possession Exorcist film goes, they hit the checklist. But that's kind of what the problem was. It felt like a checklist of stuff they were trying to knock off instead of pulling off a unique or interesting Exorcist movie. So when it comes to Exorcist Believer, I'm going to give action 2.5 stars. There's definitely a lot of slower moments in between, but a lot of that is done to build the character development between the father and daughter, which I think really works. There are for sure a lot of creepy imagery and moments between the 2 possessed little girls, but I would have liked a lot more of them. Specifically also from the other little girl and her family, because they don't get to do a lot in this film. Commenting the movie, I'm gonna give it 1.5 star too. Not gonna lie, there are moments where this demon is possessing these little girls and they're blurting out profanity, nasty thing, and I'm just sitting there giggling at it, along with most of the audience. Drama in the movie, I'm gonna give it 3 stars. They were actually just kind of so simple with their story and straightforward. They had a lot of great ideas, but they never fully fleshed them out. I still think the first half of this movie was really strong until it just starts becoming this legacy sequel. We'll see if I feel stronger about this movie once they come out with the other 2 films, because I just don't even know how you make this a trilogy. Horror in the film, I'll give 2.5 stars too. There's definitely a lot of creepy imagery, and like I said, the build up to this innocent little girl getting possessed is horrifying on its own, but once it becomes more focused on jump scares over horrifying imagery, it feels like more of a safe Exorcist movie than genuinely trying to scare you. Suspense in the movie, I'm gonna give it 2 stars. I was slightly invested towards the end about how the exorcism was going down because they had some unique ideas there, but because they're not fully explored and almost rushed, I just couldn't have that wonder whether the girls or not were gonna survive. Casual fans into the Exorcist world, I'm gonna give this a B-. Cinephiles, I'm gonna give it a C+, and critically, I'm going to give it a C-. Well, I do think there's gonna be enough people satisfied and maybe even happy with this movie. There's just nothing special or unique in here, so I recommend it's best to wait to rent it at home.
That'll do, Donkey. That'll do.
Again, that's just my opinion on the movie, guys. Like I said, when I do my spoiler review, I'll be able to dive into full details about aspects I loved and where I thought they just totally messed it up, as well as our theories on what they could do with the next 2 movies, because I think we're getting this trilogy either way. Let me know your guys' thoughts on Exorcist Believer, if you got around to seeing it, what you liked, what you didn't like. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at 3C Films or on TikTok at 3C Films. But as always, I'm Chris. Take care.